Welcome to 12 Oldfield, Knocknacarra, where we are interviewing Brother Christy Carroll.
Well, good morning to you all. I suppose you want me to talk about Clonbrock, and my earliest memories of the Carroll household in Clonbrock go back to possibly 1944, maybe 43. I can still remember my granny, Katie Kane, cooking what we called Indian meal. Its official name was Indian meal. This was boiled and served up like porridge, however it didn't taste as good. My father, Michael Carroll, was born in December 1903 into the Carroll household on the Clonbrock estate. He grew up there. He went to Kilglass Primary School, as did the other members of the family. My father had one brother, John, and 5 sisters, Kathleen, Mary, Sheila and Una. Sheila and Una were twins, and Teresa, better known as Teasy. Both Kathleen and Mary emigrated to New York. Teasy went to Birmingham, and she is the last surviving member of that generation and celebrates her 90th birthday on the 18th of next month, the 18th of July. So Kathleen and Mary, as I said, emigrated to New York and spent almost the rest of their lives there. Kathleen actually died out there. Mary came back when she married Tom Burke and spent her last years in Gowran in Kilkenny and then Horsebridge, and then is buried in Haskell. Michael, my father, became a Garda Síochána, and after his training in the depot in Dublin was assigned to Ardnacrusha, where the Shannon hydroelectrical scheme had just begun. John looked after the farm and took over from his father the responsibility for the stock belonging to the estate. Clonbrock estate was owned by the Dillon and Mahon families. Miss Ethel Dillon lived in the big house in my time. This stately mansion was the hub of a mighty wheel of activity that gave employment to many families in the parishes of Fohan and Haskell. Grandfather, Patrick Carroll, had responsibility for the stock on the land. He would consult with Arthur Armstrong, who managed the farmyard, on a daily basis with regard to the movement of stock, buying and selling, butchering when needed, etc. Grandfather was also regarded as the local vet. People would bring sick animals, horses, cows. He would diagnose what was wrong with them and prescribe a bottle. Sometimes the animal was dosed on the spot. In my father's time, he said that over in the big house, cricket was played, and grandfather, I believe, was an accomplished batsman. Now, we've no other, it's just my father's word for that. Electricity in the big house was generated from a wind charger. You could hear that working away there in the evening time when things were quiet. This big house was a centre of hive activity, and lots of people worked there. And it was self-sufficient. They had their own vegetables, they grew everything that they needed. They had their own stock when they needed meat. So they didn't have to buy very much from the local shops. I'd say sugar was probably one of the few things that wasn't produced on the land. They owned a Rolls Royce before the war, but when the war came, the Rolls Royce was left in cold storage for a while, and they had to go back to the horse-drawn carriages. And they had an open carriage, kind of a landau, and the covered one. At the corner of the farmyard, there was a castle. The castle is still there, and the story about that was that it got burnt at some reception or something that they were having, one birthday party years and years back in the previous century. The roof got burnt, and so that was more or less abandoned, and the owls nested there. But when the owls came out of the castle and came to some other part of the land, near some other person's house, that was more or less taken as a sign that somebody was going to die in that area. So the owls coming and nesting elsewhere than in the castle was not a good sign. One of the men that worked there was a Mr. Hayes, and my sister tells me that when he died, grandmother, she was the one that went over and she had all the linen and everything for laying out dead person. And even though these were Protestants, and at the time it wasn't PC for Catholics to go to a Protestant service, grandmother went and was there for the whole lot. One of my memories of Clonbrock estate is the walled garden. Now, you didn't get inside that walled garden too often, but the few times that we did happen to meet up with the lairds, who were the gardeners there, they might bring you in and give you an apple or a peach or pears, and you'd see the way this garden was so magnificently laid out. Beautiful box hedges growing around. It was like one of these European gardens, something that you'd see now in a picture. And one of the features I remember about the fruit trees, they had them along by the wall, these espalier type, where the branches were spread out and kind of with wire and so on, that trained to go along by the walls. And you had beautiful pears and all the other fruits. Then you had damsons and plums and whatnot. And I think they even had peaches there. And the lairds were the gardeners. There were two English people who were very nice. They didn't have any family. Another feature I remember from the farmyard, this was in later years, they had these what we call Muscovy ducks. They were kind of black and white ducks, and they'd fly around the place there. Big things, big as swans, some of them. And they also had a Guinea fowl, which was kind of not common around the area, apart from the ordinary hens and chickens and so on that you'd see everywhere. There was also a big dairy in that farmyard with various types of churns. And you had the tall dash churn, and you also had the barrel churn, which sometimes we get a chance to turn the handle in the barrel churn. And as I said, they had another part at the back of the house. Then they had all these workshops and one place for the carpenter. You had a forge, which the Bannertons were there in my time. Packy Bannerton, Josie and Mikey, I think, were the others. And they'd make work with all the iron things that were needed, make rims for cartwheels, while the man next door in the carpenter shop, he'd be making the spokes for the wheels, and they'd work together then to put the wheel on, or fix a wheel maybe on a cart that had got into trouble. A bit further down from the carpenter's place, you had the slaughterhouse. And I can remember on more than one occasion assisting at the killing of a sheep there. And my Uncle John used to look after that. I can still have vivid memories of the sheep lying there and the blood just being channeled down, you know. And then the animal being hung up and being skinned by hand. And it was very deft, strokes of the hand, and it would push the skin back, and no time he had the animal skinned. And it was I was amazed at it. Few characters that I can remember from around at the time. You had Mick Lyons. Mick used to look after the bull, and you'd see him coming along, walking along with this big bull and a big rope and attached to the ring on his nose. and it'd be like taking a dog for a walk, you know. Mick be taking the bull. And then others of we knew around the area had Tom Concannon. He lived at the gatehouse on the Calfra Road, and Tom and Mary, and they had a large family there. And at the other gatehouse then on the Fohana side you had the Dawsons, and they looked after that gate.